Okay, not exactly what I was expecting. It's on the other screen. Surprise! Hi, I'm Pietro Maggi. I work at Google. I spent the last 4 years as an Android developer relation, working on different libraries. I have a preference for libraries that with the initial WM. So I worked on Work Manager, I worked on Window Manager. Then I ended up without any other libraries with WM, so I moved to Android Enterprise. That's mostly why. Joking aside, I spent a lot of time working on Android and Android in the enterprise space. So I joined the team for Android Enterprise earlier this year. I started to work, take a look at a bit of the documentation, the samples available for developers, and starting to work on that. After a few months, I decided that I had enough content that I was able to share something that I think that is more or less the developer missing manual, in the sense that there is a so Android Enterprise is it's funny because I tweeted a couple of weeks ago that I was going to give these talks, and a friend of mine replied, "Okay, but what is Android Enterprise?" Okay, so I think that I have probably a bit of work to do today. This is why I put together this plan. First of all, I'm going to explain what I mean with Android Enterprise. What is Android Enterprise? Then we are going to go into the meat, in the APIs, explaining what is work profile and how an application can improve the experience for the user when there is a work profile available. And managed configuration, it's a very powerful system that allows an application on a managed device to be set up remotely from the IT organization, from the managed Google Play. This is going to cover a bit the functionality, how to use this in the code, how to test it, that I think is probably the most important part. And to this point, I'm going to talk about Jetpack Enterprise. Jetpack, you know, it's this set of library that started 5-6 years ago with the architecture components and grew over time with, I don't know, 60, 80 libraries. And Jetpack Enterprise is one of these libraries. And at the end, I'm going to cover a few other information about Android Enterprise, the managed Google Play, and so on. Probably without having enough time to go into too much detail, but to give you some additional pointing to some information. So, Android Enterprise. Android Enterprise has a story that started around 2014 with Android Lollipop 5.0. At that time, the name was Android for Work. So first of all, Android Enterprise is not a different version of Android. It's something that is included in the standard Android. So in 5.0, you can see the core functionality, the defining functionality of Android Enterprise nowadays. That is having a profile owner. So it can be a work profile for bring your own device. So where you have a personal part of the device, personal data, and a work container with the work data. Or you can have a fully managed device where there is only the content for your work, where the IT organization can control everything about this device. And then you have the managed Google Play. So how to use the infrastructure from Google to deploy application at scale for enterprises in a managed way, where an enterprise can choose which application make available in the work profile or on a dedicated, on a fully managed device. Then we have a different APIs iteration, some additional feature. One that I want to point out is on Android Oreo, Android 8.0, where we have introduced the zero-touch enrollment. The enrollment in this case is what happens if you need to give to an employee a device. You probably need to set up the device, maybe installing some application, locking down some other stuff. So zero-touch enrollment, it's a system that, in theory, with zero-touch, in reality, tapping a lot of next, but without having to put any data, allows a company to buy devices and having this serial number or EMEI, if there is a modem on the device, assigned to this enterprise, to this company. So the employee get the device, turn it on, connect to a network, and the device automatically sees that is owned by this company and start to install the application, lock down the device as needed as decided by the IT organization. The last couple of iterations, Android 12, Android 13, there has been on Android in general a lot of attention on privacy, on improving the privacy and so on. And this is the same on the enterprise side. So there have been some lockdown of the devices if you have a work profile and a personal profile, to be sure that no personal data is exposed to the IT organization. Things like be sure that around the microphone, the camera, and so on, that could have been spoofed in the past. But the idea is that really the work profile is like a single container that allows to keep everything separated from the personal data. Okay, so I was talking about these two different ways of managing the solution. So having a profile owner, like the work profile, and a fully managed device. The idea that on a work profile, when you have a profile owner, you have a personal data and the work data. The IT organization only see what is inside the work data, and you can decide that, for example, in the evening or during the weekend, you can switch off the work data. So you are not going to get any notification if you get an email on the work profile. The IT organization can set up rules, for example, where it's not possible to copy and paste from the work profile to the personal profile, and it's going to you are going to have this two set of icons and you see there is a blue suitcase for the work edition for the work instance of the application. So you're going to have two different icons for Gmail and so on. And if you launch the Google Play inside the work account, you're going to see the Manage Google Play, something where the IT organization can control what is inside this. Android in the enterprise provides a lot of different devices. It's not just smartphone and tablets. You get single-use device, the kind of device you find in the warehouse. You get rugged device, kiosk, point of sales. So it's Android being a very flexible operating system allows to have the right device for the job that you want to do at the right price point. So this is built around the customer, all the ecosystem that we have in Android Enterprise, starting with Google, with the operating system. The OEMs are the producer of these devices. And then you have the EMM, the Mobile Iron, iWatch, and similar, where you can, the IT organization can use to configure to control the Android devices and other devices with other operating system, desktop, and so on. Then you have the device reseller. That are practically the companies that, for example, if you want to have zero touch, you buy from a certified device reseller the devices, and these are linked to your organization. The good part about zero touch is that if someone steal one of these devices, even if they do a factory reset, the next time they turn it on the device and connect to a network, it's going to be seen as owned by this company. And and the IT organization can mark that as stolen, so it's going to show a pop-up that this is stolen device and is going to be useless. So this is a very quick overview of Android Enterprise. Key point, really, it's not a different version of Android, and you are going to have two different ways of controlling the device. Work profile, so profile owner, and device owner, where the full device is dedicated to work. Let's go into work profile. So work profile is this idea that it's easy to manage for the IT organization, to control the data, to deploy application, and for the user it's additional. It's very convenient because I can get a device from my company doing the work on a single device, but keeping the two environments completely separated. For example, I change job. The company decide to delete all the data in the work profile. If I have my kid's picture on the personal profile, those are not touched, and those are not even accessible to the IT organization. These are really two different containers, one for personal and one for work. And one thing that can be useful, and this we start to talk about what a developer can do. So everything that we have seen up to this point, you take an application, it works in the work profile without no problems. But there are some things that you can add to your application to make it work better in a similar situation. One idea is that you can share some data between the personal profile and the work profile. Maybe that you don't want to have two different instances of the application, or having to go to a different launcher, launch the work instance of the application, then launch the personal instance. Maybe you want to switch from a personal and work profile. And so you can, for example, this is a code lab that we have that shows how to implement this button where you see that you have the button that automatically tells you it's a a switch to personal profile, switch to work profile, and launch the other instance. So this is done with the cross-profile service, well, the cross-profile apps service, where you normally you get the handle of this service. You get the user handles that practically tells you how many users are on these devices. And the first one is the next one. So it's the one, in this case, I use for the label. So when I'm telling that you can switch to the personal profile and so on, it's something that I'm not taking track of that. It's simply the service that is telling me which is the next one that I can move to. And then in this case is just the listener for this button, where I can just start the activity telling to the cross-profile apps what is the profile that I want to jump for this activity. So the important part is also that I need to have the application installed on both profiles, because otherwise this is not going to work. So it needs to be an application that is enabled on the work profile. But at the point, it's really easy to switch from the two instances. There are also APIs to search for the work contact when you are working in the personal profile. So you want to send an email and so on to someone that you have in your work contacts, you can do from a personal application. The code lab covered that part as well. But then, okay, how can I test this? So it's all nice and fine, but I never seen a device with a work profile. Do I need to have an EMM to set up? What are the steps? So there is a utility that we have on Google Play that is this TestDPC. It's open source. The source is on GitHub. You need Blaze to build it, not Gradle. So sorry about that. But it's something that we use internally also to test all the new features that we add to Android Enterprise. So to test is really start from a clean device. We're going to see how to use TestDPC to create a work profile, and then you can deploy the application on both profiles. And it's a bit tricky also there. And then we can test the application. So the steps are defined in the code lab that I linked there. But first of all, how can you know if the users are there or not? You can use the ADB with the package manager and listing the users. In this case, it's from a device where I already used the TestDPC to create the work profile. So you can see that I have my user profile, that is with the identifier 0 is the main one, is the personal one. And usually the work profile is the user number 10. In this case, it's created by the TestDPC, so it's a sample managed profile. TestDPC is on the Play Store. This is the icon, very cool, showing some of the available features developed by the sample developer. It's very difficult to deploy application from Google. So I can understand why someone decided to deploy in this way. But it's there. So it's the official application, or you can build it from the source code, and you can start to use it. So in this case, once you install the application, there is a setup icon that you can launch, and this is going to create a work profile for you. It takes a while, but at the end, you just need to press tap next a few times. It's going to show you that the account has been created. If you want to add another account, you can skip that additional step, and you are going to end up with the personal and the work account. So how to see that you have the personal work account, you can look at the install application, and you are going to see that you have a work and personal tab with the different application available there. And then you can launch the TestDPC in the work account and have all the feature available. Okay, and then you need to install the application on both profiles. You can use ADB, telling exactly on which user you want to install. In this case, because if you normally install the application without passing the user, it's going to install the application on the user 0, so on the personal one. And also from Android Studio, when you launch the application from Android Studio, it's going to install by default only on the first user, on user 0, and launch the application on that user. So one thing that you have in Android Studio, you can change the configuration to install the application on all the users that are on the device. So in this way, you can skip ADB, you can use Android Studio. Just keep in mind that when you are launching from Android Studio, it's going to launch by default in the personal profile. So things that we see in this demo, in this presentation, you need to then launch the work profile instance of the application. Okay, this the part on the cross-profile apps service. Next is manage configuration. Manage configuration is something that you can manage, you can configure from the Manage Google Play. This is usually available as an iframe for the EMM like AirWatch, Mobile Iron, and so. Allows the IT organization to search for the app, enable the apps for the users. So practically, when I'm launching Google Play on my work profile, I'm going to see only the application that has been approved by the IT organization. I can have private apps that are only available to my company. I can have web apps also installed available inside the Manage Google Play. One thing that I have here is the manage configuration. So some application makes available some configuration through through an XML that the IT organization can use to customize the setup of the application. So for example, Chrome allows to set up the proxy and other information about the browser. You can have in your application, for example, maybe you want to have a white label application where you can change some of the theme, the color, and so on. You can put that as a managed configuration that the IT organization can customize without having to build different binaries for all the different customers. Okay, how you define the managed configuration, which configuration are available to the IT organization to customize. It is through these app restrictions. So the original name was app restriction, and everything that you find on the documentation is app restriction, up to a certain point where we talk about managed configuration. But inside the Android manifest, you define this metadata for the app restriction, and you point to a resource that is the XML where you define all the parameters. So in the sample we have, for example, there is this Boolean restriction. So you can have integer, strings, Boolean, and so on. So this is a type Boolean. The key is the identifier that you are going to use in the application and everywhere to understand that we are talking about this particular restriction. That is really not a restriction, it's a configuration, but that's how it started. And there is the full format it's available on developer.android.com. under the restriction manager, because again, that is the name that we used at the beginning, and now it's manage configuration. Once you have everything defined, this is inside your APK, and automatically it's going to be pulled from the APK by the Google, the managed Google Play iframe, and exposed as the configuration that you can change. How you do this? How these information are sent to your application is through a broadcast receiver. So you have this application action application restriction changed that is sent to your application when your application is running. That you can then, I don't know, when you receive this broadcast receiver with this intent, you can resolve which restriction has been changed and do something about that. So you can use in this case the restriction manager and then see which restriction was updated, and depending on that you can have multiple restrictions that are being updated. So you can act on that depending on the key that has been sent. And the key, as we saw at the beginning, was this, in this case, was this can say hello. So I can have in my switch case the key there, so they can say hello and do something there depending on the value. It's a Boolean, so if I can enable that or disable and do something there. Okay, how to test something like this? Because adding the restriction adding the broadcast receiver is not the hard part. Is mostly deciding what you want to make configurable and then how you test this. So again, TestDPC is going to help in this case. We can see that inside the TestDPC there is the option to load the application in the managed configuration of the application. So I'm scrolling here looking for managed configuration. This is the icon of the sample application I'm using. I can load and get all the different options. In this case, it was the can say hello. I enable it, saving the data, and the data is now sent to the application. So if I launch the personal version of the application, I don't get anything because this is not intended for the personal version. I need to use the work version. And you see that now the can say hello button is enabled because I make true in the managed configuration. If I turn it off and I go back to my application, saving and everything, I'm going to see that the button is now disabled. The moment that the application is launched, receive the intent, and in this case is the application that disabled the button as an answer for this. Okay, so through the TestDPC, it's possible to do this. The managed configuration is a very convenient way to allow application to be built with one binary, but having the IT organization of different companies to do different configuration. The problem we have there is that there is not much control of knowing when the configuration reached a particular device, if there was a problem or not. So for this, we created the Jetpack Enterprise feedback library. So Jetpack, as you know, it's a set of libraries to accelerate the development, reduce the boilerplate, and build high-quality, robust application. And the Jetpack Enterprise, in this case, is really about having a robust application because we are talking about enterprise. So we want to know exactly when the application received this configuration and if everything was okay. So in this case, it's another sample that we have on GitHub. There is under the Android organization a set of enterprise samples, and this is the one about the app restriction schema. And in this case, this is an extension function that I built as in the sample to use this keyed up state reporter. You can use this, you can build the information here. You can set the severity, the key, that again is the one that has been defined in the app restriction XML, sent to you in the intent. You can then reply to the EMM setting the key, the message, the data, if you have some data there, and you build this object. Now you can build many of these objects because you are going to send back a list of these objects, of this keyed up state, and sending to the keyed up state. You can set the state, in this case is a synchronous call. You can also set it synchronously, so that is sent immediately to the Play Store that is used to send this back to the managed Google Play. And you have a callback, and the job of the callback in this case is just to tell to your application if this transmission was successful or if there was one of these errors there. So it's nothing complex. It's really about building in the right way the information that you want to have sent, and the Play Store is taking care of sending the information to the EMM, to the managed Google Play. Again, it's the on-result state, and these are the states that are defined at this moment. How to use this, for example, in this case, when I'm updating the message, or I receive this key, and I can then use the enterprise feedback function we saw before to send a reply linked to this exact key with some value, with some data, and so on. Okay. Again, testing, because I don't want to have sending the data from the managed Google Play and waiting that this is coming back to the managed Google Play. And as you can guess, again, TestDPC can help me here. In this case, the TestDPC allows to enable to have these messages shown as notification. So you see that there is app feedback. At this moment, I don't have any notification. If I change a parameter, they can say hello again, save it, go back to my application. I'm going to see that the application is now launched, and I have now to, because I added this to a couple of messages handler, I have 2 notifications, one for each message that I sent back. Because in this case, the TestDPC is saving all the different configuration, all the different keys. So the application is going to receive all of 7 of them. So even if I change only one of them. So in this way I can see that on a device locally, without having to use the managed Google Play or anything like that, I can test this. Okay, other things of interest for Android Enterprise. One is the Android Management API. So the application we use for doing the test is called TestDPC. So test, we know what it does mean. DPC means Device Policy Controller. That initially, starting from Android Lollipop, it's the way that Android Enterprise works. You are supposed to have a DPC on the device, and initially it was a custom DPC built by the different EMM. Could be iWatch, Mobile Iron, and so on. Over time, this was becoming very expensive for the different EMMs to each one of them build a different DPC and of different quality. So we build a CloudDPC that is included already in Android. And for this reason, we are not accepting any more new DPC, because we think that using the CloudDPC is the best option. And so an EMM doesn't need to build anymore a DPC. They can just use the CloudDPC that is already available through this management API. And these are server-side API. These API are not something that you use on the device, but in this case, there is a quick start guide with a Colab that you can use in Python, for example, to test how the application works. You can create a sample account and enroll a device with your own test organization. So you can create an enterprise, create some policies, provision a device, so you can generate from the quick start a QR code to enroll the device, and then, well, you can profit, you can sell to enterprises. That's why it's so interesting enterprise. The kind of messages that you are going to send to this API is JSON. So in this case, this is sample policy that is just selling that I want to have force install on the device the iOS CAD sample from Google. So defining the enterprise name, so it's specifically linked to your enterprise. There are all the checks that you have the right access to this enterprise and so on. You can set the policy. You can create the policy, send it to the API, and then you can set this API, this policy to a particular device, to a particular users, and so on. Okay, management API. The other things that we added in Android 12, I think, is the possibility to, because now there is the CloudDPC, maybe that you want to have something done that is not available in the CloudDPC, you can give the scope, some specific scope that has been created to another application, to a third-party application. For example, logging. So you can have security logs, network event logs, and so on that are passed to a third-party application like Splunk. You want to use Splunk for network loggings. So you can do this through a third-party application. You can build this scope manager, this scope application. Private application. So this is an interesting topic. So usually you build the application, you put it on the Play Store, it's available to all the different customers. And you have to comply to some very precise scrutiny on what your application can do and can't do. You have some requirement on which API level you need to have and so on. Private applications are applications that are available only to specific enterprises, so only to specific company. When you upload your application on the Play console, you can decide which you can add over time, but you need to say, okay, this is a private application and this is the enterprise ID that can use this application in the managed Google Play. For this, you get some speed up in the reviews. You can build a custom application just for a customer without going through the normal process of the review. So it's a bit quicker, the review in this case. The only thing is that it's a one-way ticket going from a public application to a private application. So this is very important, because if you have a public application and you decide to do a test and convert to a private application, there is no button in the Play console to convert it back to public. So you need to have open a support ticket, explain which kind of mistakes you have done, and because actually, if you have maybe, I don't know, the only official way to go back to having the application public is to have a new package name for this application. So you are losing all the previous customer. And the reason is also very easy to understand, because there are less checks on private application. There is the risk that someone has a public application converted to a private, add some malware or something bad that is not that is not usually acceptable for public application, and convert it back to public application. So to avoid that, this is something that is not done practically. So please, before converting application to private, think about it. Maybe do a new package name just for the private application and work with it. Another thing that is useful for the IT organization is that they can delay the update of private application. Maybe you push a new version of the application, but I'm a retailer and maybe we are in October and I don't want to deploy anything new on the store, because this is the time in the year where I do most of the business, and if there is a problem on one of the device that I have some disruption, is going to be a very big problem. So I can postpone for 90 days. So you push a new version in October and they stop it and they deploy the application in January, just when it's safer and more quiet. Or on the other way, you have on other side, you can have a high priority. You want to push an application as soon as possible because there is a security update, or maybe because there is a new feature that is needed in this moment. You finish the update and this is pushed with high priority from the managed Google Play to all the devices. Again, this is an advantage of having a private application. Also, private application can, we don't suggest this, but it's an option. So you can host yourself the private application without using the Google Play infrastructure. But at the point, so you don't need to upload the APK. You can keep the APK on your servers, and Google Play will use that image when it needs to send the APK to a particular device. But then you need to have the bandwidth, the availability, and so on. So it's obviously an option that you have there, but you need to understand what are the issues that you are going to encounter in that case. And that is more or less what I wanted to cover today. So thank you for your time. And I don't know if there is any question, or I hope that